You're listening to the Sticks in the Six podcast. Here are your co-hosts, Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
Well, good evening, folks, and welcome to episode 179 of Sticks in the Six, brought to you by the fine folks at the Hockey Podcast Network, as well as Indie Ale House. And Peter, you mentioned it and before we kicked it off here. There's a little tiny echo here, not in my usual setup, but we like to be transparent here at the Sticks in the Six podcast. Before we get into a great week for the Toronto Maple Leafs, Peter, let's throw it over to you. How you doing this week, buddy?
Doing great, man. Doing great. It's been a quiet one for me. I'm not gonna lie. Not really much, or nothing really happened much except me just sitting around eating leftover Halloween chips, tuning in the 50th anniversary of The Godfather, watching it today. Kicked back, just relaxed. Nothing better than a back-to-back movie marathon with one of the greatest film franchises of all time. So, kind of laid back, kind of boring, and I'm basically running out of chips right now. So that's basically my week in a nutshell.
Nice. Yeah. It's been kind of a slower week on this end. Like we talked about before, some dad tax in terms of the Halloween candy, but outside of that, it's been a lot of hockey, a lot of things going on around the leagues. Obviously. Mm-hmm. We had talked about, friend of the show, Gavin Bryant, getting traded a couple weeks back. He played his first game of the season for the Peterborough Petes on Tuesday. Unfortunately, they still lost. They're held winless. They got a point. They got it to a shootout, but they're still held without a win. So hopefully he can bring that motivation to the Petes organization. They got a class organization over there. And big shout out to him because when he was in Niagara, he started Gav's Corner. Where he was bringing, folks with diabetes out to the games. And he's brought that to Peterborough with him. And Niagara kind of threw that out the window when he was traded. So good to see that, Peterborough is going to honor that. And as we mentioned, friend of the show. So we hopefully he gets into the groove of things a little bit soon, coming off shoulder surgery in the offseason. Outside of that, we have news in the NHL as well, as there always is. First off, big shout out to Dylan Holloway. Glad that he's doing well. Yeah. Obviously a big acquisition for the St. Louis Blues in the offseason. One of two offer sheets that they had against Edmonton Oilers, or former Edmonton Oilers, both having suffered injuries recently. But Holloway took a puck off the net, for those of you who did not see it. Continued the play, and he kind of joked about it a little bit today, saying, I saw a 2-1. I had to get in there. But when he got to the bench, he said all he remembers is he got a little dizzy, a little lightheaded, and then all he could remember was being on a stretcher beside an ambulance. So glad he's up, glad he's doing well, glad that it's not more serious than it could have been. Anytime you take a shot to the neck, it's something serious, and this kind of comes back to the whole neck guard argument, which we're not going to get into right now. We've had an episode about that, so
we know our stance.
Yeah, I mean, it might be time to consider mandating that at some point, but outside of that, the only other news kind of league-wide that we're going to get into is, and it's not even league-wide, it's hockey-wide. You've got Tim Peel, who, some would argue is a disgraced referee based on how he was kind of, how he retired.
Yes.
And
if you want to call it retirement.
Yeah, former journeyman Tony DeAngelo, now playing over in the KHL and having a hell of a season, let's be honest, 20 points in 16 games. But they're going back and forth on Twitter. And Peter, you saw my tweet today. I just basically retweeted saying, this is something. You got to tune into this. And they've been going back and forth on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. DeAngelo calling out Peel's podcast, saying, you only have 12 listeners. I believe he does it with, is it Jeremy Roenick he does it with?
Oh, good question.
I'm pretty sure it's JR. But so you have that kind of going back and forth. And then, of course, you have Tim Peel coming back, sending him his old stat line from, his NHL career. And
yeah, I think it's Snipes and Stripes. Is that what it's called?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. There we go.
So, I mean, and you have D'Angelo kind of going back and saying, just because you were a ref doesn't mean you made the NHL. So, Peter, what are your takeaways from this interaction outside of it being entertainment?
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those moments where you just got to sit back, grab your popcorn with two of the biggest, let's call it disappointments of the league. I mean, Tim Peel for his, hot mic incident and his hot takes, not necessarily hot takes, but, borderline takes that are, really stirs up controversy. And he's always on that side of things. Same with Tony D'Angelo. I mean, like, this is a guy that's had problems throughout his whole entire career, issues, everything dating back to his time with the Sioux Greyhounds. Like, he's been kind of like a problem player within the room. Yeah, he's having a great season in the KHL, but like when you look at it at his side of the NHL side of things, he was an offensive defenseman, but that was it. Like, this is a guy that he was one dimensional, wasn't going far, couldn't play the defensive side of the game, was just absolutely terrible with that. And, here he is going back and forth with another disgraced member of the NHL kind of thing. So it's like, you know what? Something that we like you said, it was one of those things where it's just like, you can't help but look at it, but it's like, I mean, come on. I really don't know or don't have much to say in regards to that. Maybe I'm just a little bit surprised that Tony D'Angelo didn't use one of his burner accounts to try and like get in on the conversation or have some of that support or whatever. But yeah, it's one of those like dramas where it's just like, okay, yeah, it's funny for like 2 seconds and then yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I think it's funny that like it's even a conversation. The fact that these two guys are going back and forth and it's become like kind of the talk of X. It's Elon's X. This is exactly what he's going for. He wants this kind of interaction online. He wants this BS to kind of pop up. It's Elon's X, and
it's like Tim high school drama all over again, basically.
Man, Tim Peel and Tony D'Angelo are feeding right into the I don't even know what to call it, like the insanity that is Twitter. Twitter has become something so outside of the realm of normalcy. It is what it is, but it's just something, one of those things that you have to talk about and kind of laugh at. And that's why I posted it. I'm like, what a joke of a conversation. But yeah, anyways, we're going to move on from that. We're going to move on to some Leaf talk. And before we do, free Curtis, hashtag free Curtis.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw it, but Leafs guy, was it Leafs guy 403? Leaf guy 403?
Yeah.
I believe is his
Curtis from Alberta.
Handle. Curtis from Alberta, big Leaf fan. And Molson's got him tied up. Molson's got his socials tied up. Molson's digging in a little bit because of his usage of whatever, and he decided to promote his own beer, which, all the power to him. This guy's come from, just being a fan to being maybe the biggest Leafs super fan that has ever existed. So, yeah, I just give the guy a fucking break, give the guy a break.
It's fandom at its finest. That's all I'm going to say. Like, come on.
Yeah. And he chose not to drink your beer anymore. I guess maybe that's the biggest issue. I don't know. But anyways, before we get into the real Leafs talk, what better way to kick it off than with a quick note from our friends over at Gametime. Gametime is the place, and it's the one-stop shop for tickets to anything you want, whether it be theater, comedy, sports, you name it, go to Gametime. Right now, they have some of the lowest ticket prices that you'll find anywhere. Gametime filters out all the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets like you have on other ticketing apps before. If you look at Gametime picks, curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. All in pricing. Toggling this feature shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. We all know how much we hate those processing fees, we'll call them. It also gives you an opportunity to see the panoramic view from your seat. So if you don't want an obstructed view, you can see it on Gametime. They've got the lowest price guarantee. If not, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. And on top of all of that, they have Gametime ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork right out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code THPN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code THPN for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. And Peter, just going off Gametime real quick. I don't know if you saw it, but the Hockey Podcast Network tweeted out that seats for Detroit in Chicago right now, you could get as low as $40 for seats in Chicago. I don't care if they're the worst team in the NHL, which they aren't right now, but you got Connor Bedard there. You better be purchasing those tickets for $40, man. Like that's a steal for that crowd.
Basically, you're not getting a better deal than that. You're not.
There's no way.
It's definitely worth the price of admission. Just go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's 3 beers at that's 2 beers at Scotiabank Arena.
Eventually, it'll be the price of 1 beer.
That's right. Yeah. Anyways, jumping into our Leafs talk. All season long, the Leafs power play, the penalty kill has been decent. The power play has been absolutely horrendous. You and I have kind of gone back and forth on the drop pass. I was on the podcast X account the other day, going back and forth with one of our followers on the drop pass. They say it works. I say it's bullshit. I say if you do it every once in a while, it's different than doing it every single time. Teams are buying in. They're stacking the blue line, and they're not letting anything cross. Against Boston, 3 of their 4 goals were on the power play. All of a sudden, it seems like the Maple Leafs are clicking. It's not revolving around Auston Matthews, who missed Tuesday night's game against Boston. But what's changed in this power play? And was it just a quick, things have ultimately turned around, or was it, maybe it was just they got 3 opportunities and they happened to score, but this is far from fixed.
I just want to chime in quickly about the drop pass. It does work. Again, don't use it as your go-to all of the time, and especially with the Maple Leafs, when you have the speed and skill to rush it, do it. And the fact that they drop pass it and they don't generate enough speed, that's the issue right there on the entry. And that's been their problem. Even in that game against Boston, they tried to do some drop passes. They didn't quite work out because they weren't slow. They weren't coordinated. And that ultimately kind of, got the best of them in a missed opportunity. But like you said, they had 7 power plays. They scored 3 times. And basically going back to even what happened with their game against the Minnesota Wild, where they got a power play goal with William Nylander there. Basically 2 things. I thought they were a little bit more aggressive with their playmaking. They were quick. They were getting pucks to the middle. They were pushing the Bruins defense back, and they were opening space up for those shooting opportunities, as we saw with the Morgan Rielly point shot. That went in. That was perfectly executed, and I want to see Morgan Rielly do that constantly more and more this season. 5-on-5 power play, get those shots, because we do know how great of a shooter that he can be. I know he's a pass-first kind of guy, but those are the type of plays that you want. And even said post-game, they're going to take it in stride. It was a great first step because they know how bad it was before, but this is a building block. This is something that you can use to your advantage, and it could propel them to being better and greater on the power play. Even Mitch Marner saying simplifying things. I thought that was the key, because just get pucks on net. Look what happened with Nylander's goal. He basically just threw it in front of the net, went off Carlos Schimpad and in. Doesn't matter. You're going to take that. I get that they want to have that setup, especially with Matthews as the one-time option, because we know how godly he is when he can snipe a one-timer or down low or anywhere on the ice. Yeah. Anywhere that he is. I know you want to set him up, but there's nothing wrong with being greedy when you have that opportunity. If you have an open net or a shooting lane, take it. I think that if they simplify things a little bit more and they continue to be aggressive and push the defenders down and get to the middle a little bit more, that's going to be key for them going forward. That was the issue, not necessarily the big issue, because there was a multiple of factors. I know Craig Berube said they weren't getting pucks enough to the net. This is after the St. Louis game, and then look what happens in Minnesota. It started off with a nice pass from Marner to Matthews. Matthews finds the cross seam, Nylander one-timer. Basically, the same things were happening again yesterday where they were getting those point shots. They were getting those opportunities. Riley with the goal, Matthew Nice with the tip and deflection in front. That's the kind of net front presence that you got to have to take away the sights of the goalie. So to me, everything that should have been happening before those two games or everything that they should have done in those two games should have happened before that. That is basically how you execute it. And I know that after St. Louis, they were dead last in the power play. Now they got bumped up to 26 at 14.9% on the power play. Great. You bumped up 6 more spots. If you were to able to click a little bit more, like if you got Detroit and Ottawa or Detroit and Montreal coming up, if you're able to click a little bit more on that power play, and you know how Detroit and Montreal are kind of, bottom of the standings right now, you know how vulnerable they can be. If you take advantage of that, that's just going to improve your numbers a little bit more. So like what I saw, just want to see it continue.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought it up. They were down at 7.9% at one point earlier last week in terms of their power play production. Now, like you said, up to 14%. So they've doubled that. They've matched it. 3 goals in one game. It's certainly going to help that. I like that they were a little bit more free in the offensive zone. They weren't trying to pummel Matthews with passes. And this is not taking away from Matthews because for so many other players, it's worked. I mean, Ovechkin's got his spot. Stamkos has always had his spot on the power play. Guys know the system. They know where they're supposed to line up, especially on that number 1 power play unit. So Matthews is that guy. Matthews is your shooter.
Just want to chime in. Like he could be dangerous anywhere. Not
Absolutely.
just in the one-time spot like Ovi and Stamkos. He could be a factor anywhere on the ice. Strong side, one-time, down low. This guy, like you get him moving, that's going to be a problem for a lot of teams.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. And I just liked how without him in the lineup, and we'll get to that in a little bit here, is that they were able to move it around a little bit more free. They weren't looking for that exact pass to put it in his wheelhouse to get him that shot. Instead, you had Riley taking some shots. You had Riley getting his shots through. You had Nylander throwing it on the net. You had guys taking opportunities that maybe they wouldn't normally get, and ultimately they capitalized on it. I think that's going to be the goal in terms of getting their consistency to a level that's NHL level, right? Like 14%. We're talking about a team that just within the last couple of years was the best power play in the league. Obviously, last year Edmonton was that team, but I think it was 2 or 3 seasons ago the Leafs are right up there, and this is a team that has the firepower to be that top-notch team. On the contrary, I mean, the Leafs might be one. I'm gonna have to check the stat, but the Leafs might be one of the most penalized teams in the league right now. They're operating on the penalty kill at 86%, which is good enough for 6th in the NHL right now. 0.8% behind the Florida Panthers. So when it comes to special teams, this is something that's failed the organization in the playoffs in recent years, is not being able to get power play goals, not being able to kill penalties. Right now, this is what we saw in Boston, and Stolarz said it after the game. What we saw in Boston was the most complete effort that we've seen from this team all season long.
Agreed.
That's what you want to carry forward. You're allowed to have the bad days, bad games. That being said, you want to make it so that it's a consistent effort to what you had in Boston, and let those shittier efforts be kind of like one in every 5 or 6 games, right? Mm-hmm. That's got to be the mentality moving forward, and I think that's how you see success when it comes to the power play and penalty kill.
The numbers for penalties taken this season, the top 5 teams are in order: Boston Bruins 79, LA Kings 67, Leafs 66, San Jose Sharks 64, and Philadelphia Flyers 63. So yeah, those are the top 5 most penalized teams based on the penalties that they have taken.
Crazy. And I mean, that doesn't even include the hit on David Kampf against Boston the other night as well, which we're not even going to get into because I think there's enough conspiracy theories floating around with what happened in the States last night that we're not gonna get into the conspiracy theories about the Toronto Maple Leafs. Not yet. Give me at least another week of the NHL season, and then we can talk about conspiracies. But anyways, that said, just a couple of stats to roll out here from the last week here. So last night, William Nylander scored his 64th career power play goal. That passed George Armstrong and tied Dave Keon for 6th most power play goals in franchise history. So, all things considered, what you're paying William Nylander right now for him to be 6th in power play production, I think it's out of this. You got to consider that as a win.
Answering the call.
Answering the call, absolutely. Mitch Marner had his 200th and 201st power play points last night with 2 assists. He becomes the 6th player to reach the mark with Sundin, Selming, Cabriolet, Sittler, and Keon. 6th Maple Leaf in franchise history to reach 200 power play points. Another one that's just mind-blowing. And then we talked about Matthews, and we're going to get into this in a second here, but Auston Matthews was out of the lineup on Tuesday against the Boston Bruins. Everyone panics, even though it's early in the season, as soon as you hear that Matthews is out. With including the win against the Boston Bruins on Tuesday, without Matthews in the lineup since 2016-17, the Maple Leafs have a record of 36-19-2. So at this point, if you're somewhere up in that Leafs management, you're saying stay out, get healthy, and we'll continue to play.
We okay without you. It's okay that you need to take a couple of days for some R&R, man.
Everything's gonna be all right. Everything's gonna be all right. You need a night out with Beebs? No problem. You take it. We'll be all right.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess
maybe not that far. Maybe not. Yeah,
I mean, hey, you know what? They've gone to like UFC events. They're pretty tight. Off the ice. We seen it with the All-Star game and everything like that. That's totally fine. But it's crazy how with that number, and it's not just with him. It's like whenever I'm probably going to try and steer away from the core four, a star player or important key player for the Maple Leafs is out of the lineup for whatever reason. It seems like everybody or the rest of the star players and then the rest of the lineups takes a big step forward. Like yesterday, yeah, Matthews is out. That's a big blow to the top line center, power play, you name it, even penalty kill, because he's been getting that situation right now. I really haven't been a fan of Max Domi to this point. I thought yesterday was one of his better games, mixing it up, getting those good opportunities, had some great hands and tights. I think that energetic, in-your-face style balanced out everything out perfectly with the power forward style of Matthew Knies, the playmaking of Mitch Marner. And he had some dangerous looks. I mean, we talked about him needing to shoot a hell of a lot more. He had some good looks. Couple of bad or not didn't go his way, but it was there. This is why that it's important for everybody to elevate their game in these big moments when someone as big as Matthews is out, because it just shows that they do have the depth, and then they can rely on other players than just one guy on the roster. So yeah, it sucks that he was gone, and it looks like he may be out maybe a little bit more, but it's something that's been bothering him from like preseason. He still hasn't fully recovered. So you know what? Take the rest of the time off. If it's not severe, if it's only a day-to-day thing, I'm not too worried about that. So the fact that, you had William Nylander take over offensively, Mitch Marner, Matthew Knies with a big goal and assist as well. There's 3 guys in your top 6 that elevated their play. And I even liked, Steven Lawrence. He got the empty net goal, but I thought he was a real factor in that bottom 6. I'm thinking that signing is really impactful. Obviously, Pacioretty points have kind of slowed down a bit, but same like Lawrence, the physicality, the in-your-face style. You're seeing contributions from other players that even if they don't get on the score sheet, it's having a big impact on the game. So, but yeah, the star players, the core 4, stepping it up big time. Everybody else following suit, because that's basically what needs to happen when someone like a Matthews, a Marner, or a Nylander are out of the lineup, because it is hard to replace them.
So here's what I'll say about Pacioretty, and I correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he is tied for second outright second right now on the team in hits, and he's played 3 fewer games than anybody else on the team. So hits per game, he's actually the leader for the Leafs right now. So physicality, Pacioretty might not be bringing the offense the way he did to kick off the year. That said, the physicality, the in-your-face BS that you were talking about, he's going to be right there. And he's a big body. He can skate well. He opens up the game for the people on his line. I think that's something that you have to know, and that's it. That's a shout out to his agent who decided to put that on Twitter as well.
I mean, that's the one thing that's getting lost with the signing of Max Pacioretty. I mean, everyone thought that, okay, it was a risk because of the injury, and if he's doing well, yeah, you could at least get 15, 20 goals because we know he's not going to be that 30-goal guy anymore. But what's lost in all that is the amount of hits that he has taken over his career. I mean, in just 2018-19, he had 119 hits with the Vegas Golden Knights, and he has hit the 100-hit mark 5 times in his career. So this is a guy because, yeah, he's 6'2", 270. Yeah, 6'2", 217. This is a guy that can hit, and I think everyone's overlooking that because of how great of a goal scorer that he was. But we saw the hit on Andrew Peak, which was considered a 5-minute major, but then it looked like they saw the other angle. He did get him in the shoulder. It wasn't a hit to the head. I think that was a conspiracy theory that you were talking about. But, it's a guy that's making clean hits. It's a guy that's doing his part to win puck battles, get in, set the tone a little bit every now and then. That to me is perfect right now.
You know what, right there anyways, let's talk about the Leafs game against Boston right now, because there were some questionable calls on both ends of the puck. Yeah. And we've been down this road before. If it was any other team, we'd be having the same conversation. It happens to be the Leafs. Mm-hmm. People are going to call us out for being conspiracy theorists, and the refs always have it out for the Leafs.
The rose-colored glasses kind of thing. The bias.
Yeah. Now the Tana, and I was sitting at work in along with some of my colleagues when I saw the Tanev hit on Pasternak in the corner, and the one in the first period. I'm going to say this. We do need to protect players 1,000%. I 1,000% agree that you do need to protect the players on the ice. That said, the onus on a player when he turns knowing very well, and he turned because the puck got caught up on the boards.
Yeah.
But he turned at the exact same second that Tanev had already gone in towards the hit. Mm-hmm. So he already committed. There was no letting up. There was people that
it's already happening. He's already in motion.
People that say that he could have let up, there's literally no way. You've never laid a body check if you think he could have let up, because the second, if you watch the replay, the second that Pasternak turned to play the puck, which again,
Tanev is already hovering over him.
Tanev is already lowered the shoulder and pushing and extending into Pasternak, thinking very well that he was going to continue forward progress.
Yeah.
There has to be an onus put on the player that turns, regardless of if you're playing the puck, regardless of if you're, if you just turn because somebody's coming and you're trying to draw the penalty. The onus at that point has to be put on the player, and it cannot be a penalty. It cannot put teams shorthanded when a player has already committed to the. If you're gonna already do replay where you call a 5 and you can retract the 5 and give them a 2, then you got to be able to check that and see that there's a player that has already committed to the physical aspect of the game, and there's no chance of them letting up. There was zero chance that he would let up. It was physically impossible. If he had let up, he probably would have broken an ankle because he would have tried to dig in and not lay the hit. Mm-hmm. So and I think,
No, I was just about to say, I think the only big thing why that was considered a penalty is because he got him in the numbers, but because he got him in the numbers is because Pasta turned in at the worst possible second. And, David Alter, during that whole entire thing, he basically tweeted out pass, turn, act, basically for his name. I thought that everyone was saying how he turned in. He put himself, he put himself in that spot, unfortunately. Again, it is a dangerous spot, but like you said, onus has to be on the player and the awareness has to be there, because if he would have just continued, it would have been like one of those, rub out plays, shoulder on shoulder, basically hit along the boards. Nothing wrong with that. Because he turned, and then he even got an extra 2 minutes because Marchand actually had to jump in there. And I'm kind of certain that probably should have been.
Where was the Tanev roughing? Where was the Tanev roughing on that?
They were just a bear hug, and number 2, that probably could have been considered third man in as Marchand.
But
That should have been a penalty for that. But
forget the bear hug.
yeah,
Marchand had him in a headlock. There was no roughing. The roughing was the headlock, the flying in Superman headlock. There was no roughing. The extra 2 there, and that's why Berube was going nuts at that point, because it was like, where the fuck was that call coming from?
Honestly, I absolutely love Berube's reactions to penalty calls, because we know how he was what type of player he was. The fact that he's calling it out against the officials right now is absolutely amazing to see, because he knows basically what is clean and what isn't right now. And he has a legitimate legitimate reason to be upset, especially with some calls even before then. Some of those calls were absolute BS, but you know what? It is what it is. The Maple Leafs actually played, for the most part, were the better team in that game against the Boston Bruins from top to bottom, start to finish. I mean, yeah, penalties aside, I know that it's still going to be an ongoing thing throughout the whole entire season for every single game, not just Toronto, not just Boston.
It's actually crazy. Like, it's actually fucking crazy that some of that stuff is called, and like, I know we have this conversation every single season, and I'm sure other fan bases do
every month, every week.
And I would stand by those fan bases, because 9 times out of 10, I probably agree with you.
Yeah,
this is a conversation that goes beyond hockey and it's like in every workplace now. There's zero accountability. You've taken the accountability off the person who's getting hit, and you've put it on the person who's made the hit. This is like, you can't even have an open ice hit anymore without somebody stepping in, and that person should be out of the game by the rule book, because it's an instigated fight. That's not always the case. You've taken the accountability away from goaltenders to fight for their position, because they get touched. The knob of their stick gets touched, and it's goaltender interference. You've taken all accountability, and you've taken the accountability away from the refs. The refs have no accountability. And this goes back to our conversation when we had Alex on before, where we talked about, give them a 5-minute press conference at the end of every game, like the NBA does. I mean, the NBA doesn't do that, but at the 2-minute drill at the end of the game, give them 5-minute press conference. Maybe you don't let every media member in, whatever, but you let some people in and hold them accountable. It's the most simplistic fix to this problem. That's what drives me nuts.
It should be one of those instances where, be made available for some of the top 3 questionable reactions that everyone wants to question to. Like, pick the top 3. If it was a goal against, or disallowed goal, an offside, goalie interference,
and explain
what we saw with the whole Tanev thing. Why was he given a roughing when there clearly was no roughing? And even for even with the Pacioretty hit on Peak, even if there's a little bit of an explanation on that, because I mean, he did get him in the shoulder, and Peak did lower his body. Pacioretty got him in the shoulder. That's really not a hit to the head, not even a board. So just have some of those explanations or some of those reasonings behind it, so that way we can have some clarity and a better understanding of what was going on, or your reasoning to make or not make that call.
Man, pull up Elon's Twitter and see what's trending, and those are your 3 top points that you need to talk about. Do a
basically,
even if you want to do a game by game analysis with them after the game, do a weekly report. Hey, this is what we missed on. Hey, we watched some video. You're telling me, you can't tell me that the NHL does not have people at head office that watch game tape afterwards and say, hey, this is what we missed on. You can't tell me that doesn't exist. The money that flows through this business, you can't tell me that there's nobody there doing that. Do a weekly report. Hey, boom, 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 boom. These are the 3 points that we missed. Would it change the game? Possibly, absolutely. Then that's the debate. Would it have changed the game? Probably not. But at least you guys are giving fans an explanation. People watching the game aren't stupid. People watching the game have played the game. So when they question it, it's not because out of pure fandom. It's like, hey man, that's a missed call. That's a blatant missed call. I don't know. I saw a lot more of it in the Boston game, and maybe they let them fly a little bit, but there are some questionable calls, man. There was There's a few of them. So anyways, I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm not gonna go down the conspiracy rabbit hole yet. But I'm halfway there. I'm digging the hole right now, and I'm about to jump in.
You're just one more bad ref call away from, going full on tinfoil, basically.
Well, fuck, man. Like Tim Peel's conversation with Tony D'Angelo is a perfect example of how there's still no accountability. This guy was literally let go by the NHL for like
hot
Mike explaining that they control the game, that they monitor the game, and this guy's still going off with whatever BS he has. This is a perfect example of how there's zero accountability, and even in post-retirement / firing, you still have no accountability. So, anyways, it is what it is. But this is what can affect the outcome of games, whether it's regular season or playoffs, and that needs to be the conversation. And they need to find a way to create accountability for players on the ice, for refs after the game, and for the NHL at whole in terms of, hey, we are willing to protect the players, but they need to have some onus as well in terms of protecting themselves. And if you're going to turn into a hit, you got to be aware that somebody's already committed to that hit, likely in tight situations like that. But aside from that, the Leafs against Boston, as you mentioned, it was a full effort. Stolarz got his first shutout with the Leafs, which was big. Again, right now, Stolarz is top 10 in goals against, save percentage, goals saved above average or above expected, and goals against per game. So right now, I mean, you sign this guy as a backup. He's 1,000% your starter. The Leafs had a full effort in Boston. They got it done. They knew that they were going to try and get them off their game. If you could have 3 takeaways from the Leafs game against Boston, what would they be?
The fact that they're, continuing to execute Berube's physical style play with the offense, not losing sight of that, not losing sight of being strong and defensive within your own end. I think that is very, very key and critical right now. It kind of felt like there was a playoff-like atmosphere, and it's one of those games where the Maple Leafs need to be ready in those tight checking, low moment type games until somebody breaks free and there's a mistake, and then they capitalize that, and they didn't lose momentum as a result. So I really liked that. I like the fact that, they didn't back down from anything that Boston was throwing at them. I think there was even, the whole Charlie McAvoy hit on David Camp, and McAvoy's going up, and then you see Domi come on. He's basically following and shadowing McAvoy the whole entire time until he goes to the bench and gives him a little love tap on the back of the leg or whatever. Basically showing that it's like, you know what, keep your head up kind of thing. We're not going to forget that. And basically, they set the tone. They weren't going to be pushed around. I absolutely love that. You mentioned Stolarz. I think he made a number of, I don't think he was busy that much.
But he made some big saves.
He made some big saves. And you know what? There are big saves where if it was last year or the year before where it was Ilya Samsonov, Jack Campbell, whoever you want to throw in the Maple Leafs net, if you were to compare that to what was done previous years, that was 100% a goal against if it wasn't Anthony Stolarz in net. And yeah, there were a couple big ones, even like a couple of posts where he goes and, how goalies are superstitious, tap the post, say thank you, because he got bailed out a few times, but high danger ones. But he's cool, calm, collective, even when the pressure mounts. Even when he's losing his stick half the time, he's dialed in. He doesn't care. He can make a save without the stick or not. That was important I know we touched on the power play, but that was a game where special teams came through. I mean, yeah, Maple Leafs were good 5-on-5. They had some good scoring chances, some high danger chances, but overall that game was won because of the perfect penalty kill, because of Stolarz, and because of the power play right there. So everything combined into one. You mentioned that was basically the best complete game effort. I think that it's up there with their games against the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Winnipeg Jets, despite the little bit of a meltdown or collapse in the third period, but they were the better team for at least a good 45 minutes or so in that game, 45, 50 minutes, let's say that. And this is a team that's had their number for 2 years, basically, in the regular season. So the fact that they ended their 8-game losing streak against the Bruins, I mean, that to me is a win in itself. And I think that, again, we talk about building off on the power play. I think this is something that you could build off of towards something great and going on a long run with that. So those are my takeaways for that game.
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it. Before we get into our last point here, we're going to get a quick word from the folks over at Raycon. Are you getting ready for Black Friday and there's deals that you just don't think you can get? There is one, and it's at Raycon, because with Raycon, you can get an amazing deal on premium audio every day of the year. But that doesn't mean they're not having any sales for Black Friday or Cyber Monday. Far from it. They're actually doubling down on their amazing value by offering our viewers up to 30% site-wide. A Black Friday or Cyber Monday deal you'll appreciate every day. Raycon's everyday earbuds. Especially if you haven't checked out their latest model, which includes plenty of new features that make them even more of a must-have for any audio lover. For example, they now feature a 32-hour battery life and multi-point connectivity that lets you pair with 2 devices at once, which means you can listen to 2 episodes of the Hockey Podcast, or 2 episodes from the Hockey Podcast Network at once. Raycon's everyday earbuds also come with active noise cancellation. It's a feature that's a must-have for me on long drives or just the days that you're sitting outside and want to enjoy the weather. But one that can be difficult to find at an accessible price point until now. Because that's another thing. Although Raycon's quality rivals some of the biggest names in premium audio, Raycon's start at just half the price as the other guys. So they're already an incredible deal, even before you factor in their Black Friday and Cyber Monday offer of up to 30% off site-wide. If you haven't seen or used the Raycon everyday earbuds yet, the way they fit your ears is just perfect. Raycon's everyday earbuds are also available in a variety of vibrant colors, so you don't have to just have the standard issue white or black earbuds sticking out of your ears. Instead, you can have green, purple, blue, you name it. They've probably got it. Now's the perfect time to scoop them up if you haven't already. And don't worry, if you're not as impressed as I am, Raycon offers a 30-day happiness guarantee, so you really can't lose. It's time to save big for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Go to buyraycon.com/THPN today to get up to 30% off site-wide. That's right, you'll get up to 30% off everything on Raycon's website when you go to buyraycon.com/THPN. That whole dual connectivity still blows my mind, the fact that they can have that. But anyways, last little note here we have before we close it out for the week. I know you have a big week going, obviously with the induction happening on Monday. So exciting stuff for you over at the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Anthony Stolarz. I know we spit out some numbers here. He was signed as a backup or a 1B if we're going Boston method. But I got to get your thoughts on what he's meant to this organization thus far. He's definitely come in and taken the starter role by storm. Joseph Wall is kind of working his way back in. Is Stolarz the go-to guy right now in terms of the Maple Leafs?
Again, this isn't a knock on Joseph Wall, because there were moments where he has come back and injury didn't quite help out, but it was a perfect opportunity for Stolarz to solidify his name as the number 1 starter, and he's done just that. I mean, it's difficult to basically taken a run away with it. So this is his opportunity right now. He's done a fantastic job in doing so. And you read out the numbers where he's basically top 10 overall in the league in a lot of key statistical categories. And, there isn't any doubt that he is the starter. I'm even trying to get him in fantasy because I'm having goalie troubles by trying to make a trade, and nobody wants to trade him because he's that good, basically. So I think that you want to watch out with him because he is clearly the number 1. But after he took that high shot to like the collarbone neck area, which we talked about the Dylan Holloway thing, back to, or, 2 nights where there were high shots that, could have been very, very serious. One was where one was stretchered off, but it kind of looked like where it stung him. He was able to stay in the game, and it worked out because he got the shutout. But I think right now you just got to be a little bit wary and don't overplay him too much, because this is his first year as basically the starter, and you don't want to overwork him. So if you got to split him up, like maybe if you rest him against Detroit and play Joseph Wall, or vice versa, whatever Craig Berube decides, that's his choice. You do need to give him some rest every now and then, but you can't help but be happy that the Maple Leafs have a goaltender making the stops and making the key saves that they need to right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth noting too, over the next 9 games here, the Leafs do have 5 in which they take on Atlantic Division rivals. So those 5 games especially are going to be high points, big points for this organization. Mm-hmm. On top of that, of the other 4 games, they go against the Capitals, who are having a big year. They go against the Edmonton Oilers with McDavid back in the lineup. They go against the Vegas Golden Knights, who obviously are always a tough win. And then, of course, the Utah HC, which, hit and miss, but they have some good young talent as well. So it's a big couple of weeks coming up for the Leafs, and they do need to rest Stolarz. They need to make sure that they've got a great goaltender going into the second half of the year. And to do that, goalies don't play 70 games anymore. So, and I believe we talked about this in the preseason, but both Wall and Stolarz, neither one has started more than, I believe it was 26 games in a given season. Mm-hmm. So that's something that you want to keep in mind as well while you're moving forward. But so far, so good. So far, so good. And that's the mentality you have to have right now, because we were so unsure of the goaltending situation going into the season. To have Stolarz be where he is right now, top 5 in goals against, top 5 in save percentage right now. It's pretty incredible to see that kind of play from a guy whose career was ultimately almost ended. And you mentioned too off the top of the show what's imprinted on the back of his mask, if you've got that handy.
Yes, I do. I mean, looking at so BRIce basically tweeted this out, and this is absolutely incredible to see, because it features the goalie from Rocket Power, Sam, which is absolutely cool because I remember that show. Absolutely fantastic. He has the quotes: "Prove people wrong," and rule number 76: "No excuses. Play like a champion." Mission accomplished on rule number 76. I know he was the backup to Sergei Bobrovsky, but he's a Stanley Cup champion right now, and with the opportunity that he's getting right now, certainly playing like one. And, the whole prove people wrong thing. I mean, he was a late bloomer. He was always a backup for majority of his career until this point. And even as a backup, he had really solid, strong numbers. And right now that he's a starter, it's basically carrying over. It's just a question of, I've said this before at the top of the show, or not the top of the show, but previous episodes. How is he going to manage the workload, or what's he going to be like when he reaches 40 games, 50? Can he handle that? You just got to find that balance, because this is his first full season as a starter. If that's the label that he's having right now. So yeah, I mean, it's really cool. When I saw that mask with the quote, the picture, the phrase, everything just summed up Stolarz as a goalie perfectly.
Take it for what you will. He was a hell of a goaltender with the London Knights, 35 games in 2013-14, coming off an OHL championship the previous year. He also started 47 games for the Lehigh Valley Phantoms in 2015-16 in the AHL, and he also started 39 games for the San Diego Gulls of the AHL in 2019-20. So the guy can play games. The guy can play games. It'll all depend if he can succeed with that at the NHL level as well. Before we close it out here and talk about our last point, not directly tied in with the Leafs, but just a quick word from, DraftKings Sportsbook. The quest for the Stanley Cup starts right now. The puck's dropping on the 24-25 season. Get in on all the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. Or you could do the futures like I do. Go with the Winnipeg Jets, paying now 23-1 odds, so they've bumped it up a little bit. I was 27-1 odds, and still very, very much a good pick in my mind. But if you are new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ice. Copyright NHL 2024. All rights are reserved. Now, before we close out here, just a quick note on the Nashville Predators. We saw Stamkos go over in the offseason. We saw Jonathan Marchessault go in the offseason. We've seen Ryan O'Reilly go in the past couple of seasons. This team, they just signed UC Saros to a big contract. They traded their future goaltender in Yaroslav Askarov to the San Jose Sharks. And now Barry Trotz is discussing a possible rebuild. What the hell's going on in Nashville, Peter?
One of the big surprises of the season, basically. And this was the biggest thing right now with everything that is happening. It's hearing his comments is absolutely kind of counterintuitive to what he wanted or what should have been done. You know, he said he wants to start, if they don't get things going, they're going to start a rebuild. What we did in summer was fantasy hockey until we become a good team. I mean, you brought in Stanley Cup chances, Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault. You brought in a top 4 defender in Brady Skay. And, you know, those are big time contracts. Stamkos is earning $8 million and he only has 5 points in 12 games. Skay, 6 points in 12 games. You know, Jonathan Marchessault, 7 and 12. The only one that you're relying on offensively right now is Philip Forsberg. So the guys that you brought in to try and help push your team a little bit forward to be this sort of fantasy team until your younger players come up, they're not really doing a whole lot. And as you mentioned, you know, you want to focus on their younger players like they have. And, you know, they got a good crop of players coming up. You know, they got, you know, Phil Tomasino, Luke Evangelista, UC Parsonen, Zachary LaRue. You know, some issues with taking too many penalties and getting a little too ahead of himself, you know, emotions taking over, but he was a hell of a power forward in the QMJHL. You know, you have prospects coming up in the system as well, and they have a deep prospect pool. I get you want to do that, but at the same time, it's like you traded away your top goaltender as well for basically to sign UC Saros. I mean,
And
it's
how
not
important
that.
how important have we talked about building and developing and drafting your own goaltenders in your organization?
And you had one. You drafted one that 2020 season. You literally drafted him to replace Pecorine when UC Saros took over, and now he was supposed to surpass UC Saros. And right now, in the AHL, he's 5-1 with a .950 save percentage on 1.51 goals against average. I get he wanted an opportunity.
Oops.
I think maybe they don't want to bring him. San Jose wants to bring him into that position where they may be bad. They're going to be in another lottery pick situation and kind of stunt his growth and development a little bit. But at the same time, he's putting up numbers. At some point, you're probably going to have to call him up. And it looks like the Nashville Predators could use the guy that they traded away and a young goaltender at that. So, yeah, you have great players coming up, but you traded away one of those key ones that could have been one of those transitional players that if you can't rely on UC Saros right now, you could have relied on Yaroslav Askarov to at least be a decent backstop while the offense isn't doing its job. Because if he puts up the numbers, you may have got something right now. So I don't know what Trotz was doing saying that, but it kind of looks like his plan may have backfired, which is not a good sign right now. And if he's trying to bank on his, you know, free agent signings and the rest of his team to step forward, it's a tall task for everyone to do.
It makes you think of when Chicago said they were going to go through a rebuild, didn't really inform Kane, didn't really inform Taves, didn't inform Seabrook, Keith, and Kane left or Kane got moved, and there was really this conversation about we can't go through a rebuild. I don't want to be here for a rebuild. The conversation now is, will Stamkos, will Brady Shea, will Marchessault, will they all want to be there for a rebuild? I have to think that, yeah, Stamkos is signed for, I believe it was 4 years. I have to think that he doesn't want to be there for a rebuild. I have to think that he wants to go after another cup before he retires. But Ryan O'Reilly, does he want to be there for a rebuild? Luke Shen, does he want to be there for a rebuild? Does UC Saros really want to be there for a rebuild? And they had the pieces. Remember, they had Tanner Jeannot. Mm-hmm. Remember, they had Yaroslav Askarov. This team had the potential of doing it on the fly, and I think they fucked it up by trading Askarov, by letting Jeannot go. He was going to cost some money, but yeah, it's a tough position to be in right now, and I think Barry Trotz is lost right now in his first real role as a NHL GM. I think he's lost, and I think he's trying to squander his way back and see what he can do.
I think when we did our sort of like season preview of each team, I thought that, Stamkos would have been a big factor for Nashville and big loss for Tampa Bay. Clearly, it's the opposite that's happening right now, and Stamkos has gone very, very cold right now. So if there's somebody that they need to pick up, it's going to be that $8 million man that they signed in the offseason, because he's been very, very quiet.
He's been very quiet. Yeah, you're absolutely right. As we mentioned, we don't know quite yet, if you're still with us, we don't know quite yet if Matthews will be back for the game on Friday against Detroit. But day to day, the record speaks for itself that the Leafs should be okay against teams like the Red Wings and the Canadiens coming forward. That said, the Leafs do have another back-to-back early in the season. Friday, they play at home against the Red Wings. Then they play at home against the Montreal Canadiens. And then again on Tuesday at home against the Ottawa Senators. So back-to-back home games against Atlantic Division rivals. It's going to be a fun week, Peter. You're going to have a fun week.
I was about to say multiple back-to-back games as well, because this is now like the third or fourth time, because it started off with Montreal and New Jersey. They had this one this past weekend. They had one previously before. This is probably the fourth one in the schedule. I'm like, that's a heavy workload for this team early on.
It absolutely is. Absolutely, yeah. So it'll be interesting. But second half, they get a little bit more rest time, hopefully, and it could benefit them. Could benefit Anthony Stolarz in the long run. So we'll see how that plays out. But as I mentioned, fun week for the Leafs ahead. Fun week for you ahead. Enjoy the induction ceremonies on November 11th. Wonderful day. I will be in Oakville, actually, at the Cenotaph, laying a wreath for my grandfather. So Beautiful. All respect to all the veterans. Stay safe.
Absolutely. And
until next time, it's been a riot. That's episode 179 on behalf of the Hockey Podcast Network and the fine folks at Indie Ale House. Until next week for episode 180, that's it for us. Go Leafs, go.